This is Paranormal M, where haunting stories and eerie mysteries take the spotlight. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications for weekly chills. Let's unravel the unknown together. I saw a tall black shadow with tentacles and sleep paralysis. There was an experience I had that I can't quite wrap my head around. Just to give you some context, I was enlisted in the U.S. Air Force for 10 years as a C-2 controller, or command post. At my first duty station at Misawa Air Base in Japan, I got assigned to dorm building 666. Aside from a noticeable increase in sleep paralysis experiences since moving in, I didn't think much of it, and I figured it was due to stress from, acclimating to moving away from home. A couple of months go by, and there's a small influx of tech school airmen. They're in the command post, and all of them also get assigned to the same building. It wasn't until people started to settle into their dorms when some of them also noticed that they've been getting a lot more sleep paralysis experiences as well. We would share these stories passingly during shift changeovers and such. One coworker in particular lived on the same floor as I did. And one day, they just knocked on my door in the middle of the day and asked if I could just do whatever I was doing in my room and bring it to his living room, so that way he can feel safe sleeping for his coming night shift. Someone would later commit suicide in the building, and the base chaplain pushed for building number change to 660 the following week. With the long-winded context out of the way, one night I had a dream where I was in a luxurious mansion with women all around me. In the dream, I was laughing, having a good time, when amongst all the noise and commotion I hear a voice say, "You can have all of this, if 666. The moment I heard the words and realized what was said, I abruptly woke up, but with my eyes closed. My whole body felt like I was convulsing, but I still couldn't move. So I kept my eyes closed, suspecting it to be sleep paralysis, and I didn't want to see what I would see. Despite this, I saw this vision. It was of a tall black shadow with convulsing tentacles on each side, slowly moving closer to my bedside. It went from the end of my bed, and I hear it say something along the lines of, "I'll get you next time." And then I woke up. I'm not saying what I experienced was 100% paranormal, and I'm sure that experience alone can be rationally explained away through stress. But before then, I very rarely experienced sleep paralysis, and since leaving there, I haven't had a sleep paralysis episode since. To this day. I'd love to hear what this community thinks, especially if there are any supernatural beings anybody's aware that has the characteristics as I described them. I saw something in the window. I've told this story to a few of my close friends, but besides that, nobody really knows about this. To set the scene, I'm 12 years old, and it's a cold Ohio winter. My parents were divorced, and on this particular day, I was staying with my dad and his girlfriend at the time. His girlfriend had a daughter, Allie, 14, and she had a boyfriend, Evan, 14. At this time, I saw Allie as a sister, because I grew up with 5 brothers and no sisters, and I wanted her to be my sister so bad. On this particular night, Allie and Evan had invited me to join them at a youth group event across town. I was reluctant because it was for high schoolers only. I was in 7th grade, but they eventually convinced me and we went. We walked across town in freezing cold, and after about 20 minutes we made it to the right building. I don't remember if the building was actually a church, but it was a 1-story building. There were doors on both ends that were connected by a hallway. So, if you looked in the glass on one door, you could see down to the other door. When we got to the building, nobody was there, and the only light on was a singular light in the hallway. We were annoyed that Evan had gotten the date wrong, and We had walked in the cold for no reason. We decided to rest at the building for a few before making the walk back home. As we approached the building, I remember Allie looking into the window on the door first, and I remember watching her jaw drop as she looked into it. Next, Evan looked in and started describing what he was seeing. A tall figure in the hallway. My heart dropped, but I honestly thought they were just messing with me. Then I looked in, and I saw it. As I looked in the window, I see a tall figure in the hallway, but it's crouched down. It has insanely long arms and legs, and when I look in, it's in the process of standing up. Immediately, I can tell it's as tall as the ceiling at least. It was wearing a suit, and it had extremely pale skin but no face. As it's standing up, it's waving its arms around like crazy. This figure looked eerily similar to Slender Man, but I know that's just another creepypasta. I don't know how else to describe what was standing in front of me. Immediately, I take my eyes off the window, but because we were dumb kids, we decided to take a walk around the building before we left. I tried to avoid looking through the windows, but there was a tapping noise that I heard as we made our way around. Not sure that was anything paranormal, though. One final note is that I talked to Allie years after it happened, and I'm 99.99% sure it wasn't something they planned just to scare me. I think we all genuinely saw this thing, and I'm just so curious to know what it was and what it means. If somebody has a guess on what really happened this night, please give me your thoughts. Is it a mimic or something else? To start it off, my mom will swear that she hears me sobbing upstairs and I'm very much not. She'll call me to ask only for me to be outside or in part of the house that she shouldn't be able to hear me from. Or just straight up not crying, which leaves us both confused. And then having the mutual agreement of, we didn't hear a thing. Next, I'll hear scratching on my door at night in a cadence that would be very unusual for my cats. Or even on part of the door my cats can't reach. But weird noises aside, last night was the kicker. Both my mom and I saw our cat Kyle go upstairs with my stepdad for bed. But when I came downstairs at 0100 to make something to eat, Kyle was sleeping on my mom's lap. I didn't think anything of it at the time, just assumed my stepdad kicked him out of the room for being an annoying orange cat. Apparently, my stepdad didn't kick Kyle out of the room last night. He doesn't believe that Kyle could have possibly been downstairs. My girlfriend also has an account of seeing Kyle with my mom, and as I turned the camera around to face him when we were on FaceTime, mostly putting the mimic buzzword in the title to get people outraged for thinking it could be that, I honestly don't know what it could possibly be. We've dubbed the entity pretending to be our cat Anti-Kyle. Should probably also be noted that Kyle spends a lot of time playing in our garden, with supervision but still. Update 1. No more dubious cat activity inside. We Palo Santo'd the house and specifically focused on Kyle. However, around our house has been kind of weird. There's this orange cat that's been periodically visiting outside. It looks exactly like Kyle, except its face is too tall to be Kyle. It'll come up to the back door, meow to be let in, which is a huge red flag because Kyle can't meow. Poor Kyle. And then, when we say, oh, that's not Kyle, it'll start slowly backing away while facing the door and then bolt away. After it's vanished around the corner, a few seconds later we'll see a different cat walk away. It's usually this one stray that we feed named Karen. We've stopped letting Kyle go into the garden altogether. We're all actually kind of freaked out. Whatever this thing is, it's not happy that we kicked it out of the house, getting ready to put iron stakes around our property, which I'm hoping will help. Maybe if you point him up. FaceTime Nightmare, Unexplained Paranormal Activity. I, a 24-year-old female, encountered the most horrifying and unexplainable paranormal activity when I was 13. Long, but a wild ride. Fake names, too. Haunts me to this day. Maybe somebody can provide an explanation, but I have yet to find one myself. My best friend Jordan, a female the same age, and I were FaceTiming on a casual summer afternoon. We often would do our own thing while on call just for company's sake. For illustration, she had a vanity in her bedroom which she would keep her iPad propped up that gave a view of the chair that she sat on when using the vanity on the blank wall it faced. On the other side of the vanity was a wall that was shared with her closet. She was organizing her clothes, and I was minding my business, playing with my dog while my iPad sat propped up on the kitchen table. Occasionally, I would glance over at the iPad, but it was always in my peripheral view. At some point, I noticed the chair was no longer kissing the vanity, but was pulled back an inch or two. Didn't think anything of it, so I continued minding my own. A couple minutes passed, and I looked over and I saw it was noticeably farther from the vanity, about a foot away now. I thought that strange, but maybe my eyes were playing tricks on me. Another minute passed, and when I looked back over the chair, it was a solid few feet from the vanity, and at this point I knew something was weird. She was playing tricks on me. Was I, not noticing her coming into the camera view? I thought I would have noticed my peripherals. I could also hear her moving things in the closet the whole time, but maybe I was wrong. At this point, I said something along the lines of, Jordan, why is your chair moved so much? She then walks out of the closet to where I can see her and looks visibly distressed. She's never been the type to play pranks or lie. We're best friends to this day. Is virtually incapable of lying. So I believed that she didn't do it. For context, I could see the entire chair at this point, the floor around it and everything. So I could see that nobody was moving the chair. She was also home alone, by the way. Then, all of a sudden, the chair flies backwards into the wall. We both screamed bloody murder. We've never had such a visceral reaction to something in my life. We didn't know what to do or say for a minute, and we just sat in deafening silence. She moved the chair back to its proper place. We decided to carry on and ignore what happened, probably out of fear to acknowledge it. She then tells me that she needs to grab some trash bags from downstairs and that she'd be right back. And now this is where things get pretty intense and pretty unbelievable. It's so out of this world that I truly can't comprehend to this day how or what happened. I went back to playing with my dog when I got a sudden urge to look at the camera. A goddamn rope, think noose-like. It drops and hangs from what I assumed to be the ceiling, but I couldn't see it as the camera's out of view. I hung up the call, started bawling my eyes out. It felt demonic. I got a call back from her a few minutes later, still in tears. She looked concerned and asked what happened. I said, "Do you own a rope?" She said, "No." I said, "Did you drop a rope in front of the camera?" She said, "No." I then explained what happened, and she didn't believe me at first, but the measure of my distress indicated to her I was telling the truth. Now, she very well could have been the culprit, but this was 11 years ago, and she wouldn't have been capable of holding on to a lie for this long. Still talk about that day a lot, too. I know how insane this sounds, and I know this feels like a scene from The Conjuring. Couldn't possibly be real. But I swear on my life, on my dead brother's grave, this event is real. I struggle to tell people about it because of how insane I sound when I say it. I've had many other paranormal interactions, but nothing to this intensity. Happy to sound insane on your behalf. Daughter met a younger version of her grandmother. Or perhaps great-grandmother. Back in March of 2021, my 18-year-old daughter was overwhelmed by an experience that she had on a shuttle. She'd fallen asleep during her 4-hour journey, and when she awoke, 2 other passengers had gotten on. One of them, a man, sat in front of her, and the other, a young, beautiful woman with braided hair, sat beside her smiling. The woman spoke to her, asking, "Young lady, do you know who I am?" My daughter looked at her closely and said, "No." The woman smiled and said, "I'm your Nana that raised you when you were little." My daughter looked more closely at her and realized it was a very young version of her great-grandmother. She had seen photos of her when she was younger, but the woman looked even younger than the photographs. And she had a glow to her. She started to cry, and the woman said, "Be strong, wear a smile, and carry on." The shuttle stopped minutes later. The man seated in front got off and walked in one direction, and the young woman got up to leave as well. She told my daughter, "I have to go now. Take care of yourself." She got off the shuttle and disappeared. The words "wear a smile and carry on" are from my grandmother's favorite song, "Till the Lights of London Shine Again." And it's something that she always said to us. Or she'd sing a few lines from it when saying goodbye to us. "Don't you cry when I'm gone, wear a smile and carry on, till the lights of London shine again." So, was this her younger reborn spirit that my daughter encountered? Still unsure what to make of it. My grandmother passed in 2013. I like that one. Childhood house haunted by skull. So I just wanted to share the story of my childhood home in upstate New York. I thought you guys might like it. I personally don't know if I believe in the paranormal because other than this house, I haven't experienced anything paranormal per se. When my dad and mom first bought this house, my dad was working at a nearby music store, I think. While working, he said that a very suspicious old man would come in often wearing bones on his necklace. My dad, being punk and 20-something, thought his necklace was awesome, asked the old man about it. The old man told him they were real bones. My dad, fucking with the old man because he didn't believe him, told him that he wanted a human skull. The man said he could get him one. My dad thought this was hilarious, and after a couple of weeks went by, he started to forget about it. One day the man came in and actually gave my dad a skull. My dad was very surprised, but assumed it wasn't real and took it home. Bold move. My mom, who is very superstitious, was very mad at my dad and told him to get rid of the skull. My dad decided to put it in the basement and forget about it. After this, the house was never the same. My aunt told me that she saw my brother, who was probably a toddler around this time, being held by a little girl out of the corner of her eye. My mom also claims to have seen this little girl hanging around me in my brother's room when we were toddlers. My mom soon began to have horrific dreams, would see people standing by her bed. She woke up on multiple occasions screaming bloody murder, and claiming that there were men in her closet. Sometimes she wouldn't even remember these fits. When I was around 5, I started to have extreme night terrors as well. I would also sleepwalk. So one night my mom woke up in another scared frenzy. She quickly went to my room to see I wasn't there. She went downstairs to see me sitting crisscross applesauce in front of the TV that wasn't on. When she asked what I was doing, I told her I was watching my show and that I wanted to hang out with my friends outside. I did not remember this, by the way. My mom carried me upstairs and put me to bed. My brother played with the Ouija board, claimed to see my mom standing straight up in bed with her eyes staring forward. When he tried to talk to her, she simply got back in bed and went to sleep. Another thing that would happen is you could hear people walking up and down the stairs. Even when home alone, there was often knocking on my walls as well. After my parents got divorced, my mom decided to move out of this house. The basement was very big and cluttered, so we called someone with a big garbage truck to help us empty it out. When my dad moved out, he didn't go looking for the skull because he had forgotten where he'd put it down there. After cleaning out the whole basement, going through everything, we never found that skull. There was no creepy history in the house, at least I think, and we actually knew the woman whose father built the house in the 80s. Other than this woman's family, we were the only other people to live there at the time. And the last time I was in the house before leaving, I felt terrified, like something or someone was telling me to leave. I ran out of that house. Now my mom and I sleep just fine, and I have not experienced anything else paranormal. My family's dead cat came to say goodbye. This is a pretty sad story, so strap in. When I was in elementary school, my mother decided to surprise the entire family, including my father, with 2 Siamese kittens. One was an ugly little scraggly runt who was on the path to euthanization, which was stopped by my mother, who only planned on getting 1 cat. The other one is the one I'm talking about today. An absolutely gorgeous gray and white Siamese cat with beautiful blue eyes. We named the runt Rascal, and the other Julian. While the runt eventually came, my best friend, as he was very social, Julian needed some help adjusting to his home. The first night there, that was while Rascal was crawling all over his new family and sleeping on their shoulders. Julian and I were sitting in our enclosed front porch. He was so shy, and I wanted him to feel welcome. We sat there for hours until he decided to explore the house. Flash forward to when I was in high school. Rascal is now a fat little boy who pees on clothes and climbs ladders. We really bonded over time to the point that I called him my son. On the other hand, my sister and mother were really attached to Julian. He never really cuddled with Dad or me. He barely let us pick him up, but he absolutely loved them. They would play fetch with pencil-top erasers and laugh so hard when Julian sniffed the dog's ear and fell over for some reason. It was so special. I woke up to screams, my sister going ballistic in the room next to mine, and in a daze I could hear my parents sprint to my sister's room and my mother join in screaming, then crying. I didn't even get out of bed as I heard what happened. Julian just died. No warning, no reason. He died laying with my sister. In hysterics, my mother took his body and told us to say goodbye. I don't even like looking at corpses of roadkill on the road, so I turned around when she came to me, and I never said goodbye. The next day sucked, but went on. I was working on my school's musical, so I got home late and tired. Couple hours in bed, and I was finally drifting to sleep. I felt the familiar feeling of a cat stepping around my bed and over my legs. I thought nothing of it, as it was probably my baby boy coming to look for comfort. But it wasn't right. I knew my cat's steps, and it wasn't him. I looked to the foot of the bed to see nothing. More confused than anything, I scanned my room looking for Rascal. Slowly turning to my left, my eyes locked with the desk chair. Not the chair itself, but what was on it. A single pencil-top eraser. About a minute later, my cat walked in. Cried all night with him in my arms. Never told my family. It would have been too much for them back then, and now I don't want to give my mother more ideas than I'm able to communicate with the dead. Longer story. But I'm pretty sure Julian came to say goodbye to me, and I'm glad he did. My experiences of possibly being haunted. Kinda just never took it too seriously before. Felt most people don't believe me. But I think I've been haunted or cursed for a few years now, ever since the pandemic. I had had a feeling of something or somebody watching me. It started with insomnia and sleep paralysis. The first time I ever experienced anything, I was sleeping. Then I felt something, like hold my arm behind my back, and I could hear somebody screaming in my ear. Lots of things have happened over the years, but it was always the same. I'd try to sleep paralysis kicks in, and then I would feel helpless. It's like somebody was pinning me down. Sometimes I'd make out somebody's voice. Hard to hear or understand them, but it was always terrifying. I'd shoot up immediately awake because I'd be scared. Later down the line, I moved out of my house. And for the time, things settled down. But some nights at my new spot, I would see things creeping around my bed. I would even feel things moving on top of me. Then one day, very violently, I felt something grab at my neck. I could distinctly feel what felt like something kissing me. And then these actions became a regular occurrence. I remember opening my eyes in the middle of the night, seeing shadowy wisps floating in the air. There was one time I could, distinctly hear what they were saying. They mimicked my little sister's voice, and they stopped, or rather, they yelled stop 3 times. And each time she yelled, it grew louder, more worrisome, and then completely distorted. I had documented all these encounters in a journal for myself almost immediately afterwards. I've had roommates say that they felt some strange things in the night, as well as after staying with me for an extended period of time, and lately it's been getting stronger. At work one day, unexplainably, I've had things tip over without any reason. I've had others witness it as well. I had seen some figure creeping at the foot of my bed, and then immediately after, another voice laughing in my ear. Probably the worst encounter today alone. I'm currently home alone all week, since my grandparents are gone on the trip. So I was worried something like this might happen. But it started with an overwhelming sense of dread and fear, causing me to wake up at around 3. I tried to calm down and go back to sleep, but shortly after I felt something pulling at my heart, like it was trying to pull it out. I fainted, and the next thing I knew, I felt something grab at my face. It was trying to force herself on me. I could see a shadowy figure similar to the wisp before, and it appeared like a woman who may have had horns. And this was the first time I could make any words, but could only weakly say no as if the air in my lungs was being sucked out. An hour or so later, after I calmed down, I tried to go back to sleep with the light on. That's because I'm terrified. I can very clearly see a translucent figure bouncing on my stomach. And this time it's a girl in what looks like a white sheet. Then she disappeared. I could still see some distortion moving around against the TV, but that's turned off, so no explanation. And 30 minutes ago, I tried to fall asleep one last time because I have work in an hour or so. I could very clearly hear a girl saying to me in my ear, "Yeah, give it up," or "Eric and Isabella, the greatest. I love your, it's so nice," and I could make out everything, but I can't recall knowing an Isabella, let alone one that passed. I usually just played it off since it didn't feel all too real, or maybe I was imagining it. But it's getting out of hand, and it's always consistently a shadowy, wispy figure of a woman's voice. Or something in the fact that I had 3 experiences all within a single night put me on edge. Please tell me I'm not losing my mind, or if anybody's experienced anything like this. My aunt's funny/creepy paranormal encounter. Floating panties. My aunt told me this about 2 months ago. I had to share it with you all since it's funny yet creepy. For a quick backstory, my aunt lives with my grandmother in Fresno, California. The house they live in has been known for paranormal activity, but it doesn't happen too often. Most of the time, they don't see or hear anything, but every once in a blue moon they will. You could say it's a very quiet, laid-back ghost, until this incident. So she begins to tell me how she had to come back from buying groceries one afternoon. Just a regular, simple day. After putting the groceries away, she'd hop into the shower. After getting out, she then proceeds to walk back into her bedroom, opens her closet door, and no joke, she literally sees her thong underwear floating in midair inside of the closet. Literally floating. as if someone was holding them with one finger and let them droop down. I couldn't help but to laugh at this when she told me. It was as if the spirit knew that's what she needed to put on next after getting out of the shower. And all the articles of clothing, like why did it choose to hold up a thong? Hilarious. She was very tickled by this, hopefully not literally, but also extremely creeped out and shook. She tried looking around the floating panties to see if they somehow got caught on a string or was hooked on something, but nope, nothing. She then grabbed the panties and actually wore them, which makes the story even funnier. Her response to this experience was, I guess the spirit was trying to pick out which underwear they wanted me to wear for the day. I don't know if I should be scared or thankful. Me neither. Ghost in my house keeps following me around. I and my parents moved into this fairly recently made condo about 7 years ago. I've experienced my fair share of strange stuff, especially at night when everyone's asleep or when I'm alone at home, and usually this ghost has been very quiet, but for some reason it's been acting up this past week and I don't know why. For example, this week I've seen forks and spoons move by themselves. I've seen my clothes move a bit, and I've even seen the same black figure in the corner of my eye. Just the other night, I'm staying up late and I thought I saw a man dressed in black standing right at the foot of my bed. Once I looked at it, it was gone. But get this, my cat, who was sitting next to me at the time, was staring in the direction of where I saw it for a good while. Gave me the creeps. Just this afternoon, I was doing homework in my bedroom by myself. I saw a fork slide a few inches across a plate in the corner of my eye. I know I wasn't seeing things because it made a loud clink as its handle touched the plate. I also wake up sometimes and find my computer closed and plugged in. I always sleep with my computer on and I never close it. My door's locked, so my parents couldn't have come in and closed it for me. Just last week I woke up in the middle of the night and found myself facing away from my computer and it was closed. My door was locked. Really can't see how a computer can just close like that when I'm sleeping. I know this could be written off as a cat thing, but my cat senses weird stuff when he follows me around. He always looks at something behind or right next to me. Freaks me out. Another thing in this is, shadow person I keep seeing always looks the same. Tall and featureless. Never gotten a good look at him, though, as I can only see him in the corner of my eye. All of these things could just be me imagining shit, but I don't know. I feel like there's a presence in my home. Auschwitz Paranormal Experience. First of all, as soon as I stepped through the gates, I felt an immediate heaviness on my shoulders. My ears began to ring, silencing out pretty much everything else. It was the type of ring you get when when your flight lands. Except this lasted the whole time. The air was so still, it was so silent and extremely eerie. During our tour, I believe there was an issue with the transmitter as it was quite muffled to begin with. I thought the sound of crying and muffles were because of the poor quality headphones. However, after taking my headphones off, I can 100% be sure that I was hearing cries of children and women. The cries were very quiet, but I could hear them. They continued throughout the whole tour as, sorry, the German word surprises me each time. Throughout the whole tour at Auschwitz, until the final stop, the gas chambers and the crematorium. Since those points, I no longer heard any cries, but the heaviness and stillness was still there. Following the tour, as soon as I left Auschwitz, I had a severe throbbing headache, like a full ring of tension around my head. I never usually get headaches until dealing with a lot of emotional distress, and even then, they never get as bad as this. A psychic back in October told me that I was extremely sensitive to spirit, and that I have supernatural abilities. Has anybody had a similar experience? Eastern State Penitentiary, the Trapped Spirits. About a month ago now, my fiancé, then boyfriend, and I went to Philadelphia for a couple of days for a fun trip. We live not far from the area. One of the places I wanted to stop after finding out that it was the right city, or rather finding out that it was right in the city, was the Eastern State Penitentiary. So we leave for the trip. The rest of the trip goes fantastic, and it's a wonderful time. But the morning before we were supposed to go to the penitentiary, I get this foreboding sense that this is going to change me or something's going to happen. We happen to find a tarot deck at the table during breakfast. I do tarot readings and I have a deck at home, so I wanted to do one for fun. The devil card comes flying out of the deck to the point where him and I are both crawling around the floor looking for what came out. It was eerie, but I just let it pass. When we got to the prison, we did the audio tour, but managed to catch a special side tour, where they let us into office portions that are now off limits. The tour guide started talking and started getting the worst headache and feeling lightheaded as soon as the tour guy started. Or at least once he started talking about this man who was an artist. Went away as soon as we left the area as the tour ended. In the operating room, I had my back to a wall and felt like someone pushed me, to the point where I stepped forward thinking somebody was trying to pass behind me. Or it was my fiancé behind me touching me. I turned, he was standing a good 2 feet away in another part of the room. Midway through our audio tour, we were in the speaker's room. That's with a bunch of different voices of the prisoners. I have long curly hair, and I felt somebody touch my back and pull on my hair, which was up in a ponytail. I turned back to my fiancé, who was standing behind me, asking if he felt that. He said he just... Settle down, sir. He said he just got chills like a burst of cold air in front of him. I'm definitely convinced someone or something stepped in between us to pull on my hair. Maybe a curious prisoner. It's been months now since our visit, and he's not a huge believer in the paranormal or supernatural. But even he says this experience with the trip was strange and unexplainable. Here's my one paranormal story. So back in 2017, my wife, which was my girlfriend at the time, and I were living in this house. We were young adults, 19-ish years old. I was smoking weed, not even good weed to be honest, just some mid, and we're watching something on TV. My wife wasn't smoking. The TV is hanging on the wall. To the left of the TV is the hallway. The left side of the hallway is the bathroom. The right side is the spare bedroom, and straight back was our bedroom. While watching TV, I noticed a black shadowy figure glide through the bathroom door, glides across the hall, goes into the spare bedroom. Obviously, it didn't open any door, just went through them. The figure was roughly 5 foot tall and broad-shouldered. So I see the figure appear and disappear. I instantly thought my weed was laced or something. Started looking at my blunt, even though I felt fine. I didn't say anything about it, I just thought it was me tripping and seeing things, so I started laughing. While this happens, our dogs were laying at my feet until the figure appeared. They were terrified and got on the couch. My wife asks, "Why are you laughing?" I replied with, "I thought I saw something." She immediately replied with, "Did it come out of the bathroom?" That's when we talk about what we had seen. We both were seeing the same thing, same description of it and everything. After it disappears, I got up to go check the spare bedroom and whatnot. Make sure the doors are all locked. No windows open. I checked the ceiling fan because it was on, just to see if the shadow of the fan blades could have possibly been whatever we saw. No way possible it could have been the fan. With the dogs getting scared and just being able to sense a great presence of energy that night, I fully believe it was the ghost, spirit, or demon or something similar. 7.5 years later, I've never experienced anything remotely close to this again. Backstory on the house. It was my wife's aunt's house. She let us take over her rent while she moved out with her boyfriend. I don't know much about the house otherwise. The aunt never experienced anything like this and thinks that we were just tweaking out on weed. Basement. So I grew up in Poland right after communism fell. So we used to have many bloki, or communal buildings. I guess comparable to the co-op city buildings in the Bronx, just a bit smaller. As kids, we used to play hide-and-seek outside, until one of the older kids recommended we play hide-and-seek in the basement of those communal buildings. Basically, those basements were these large hallways with multiple individual basements. So if there was 100 apartment units, there would be 100 individual basements. Basically looked like underground corridors. Eventually, we'd figured it's so fun, or rather no fun, to play with the lights on, so we turned them off and started going with that. After some time, all the kids, 8 to 12 years old, started to freak out because an adult came in. We wasn't allowed to be loud, especially at like 10 p.m. Everybody dashed out to the right side of the door. They locked it behind them, leaving me in the dark basement alone, and I was like 9. We all visibly saw a silhouette of a grown man yelling at everyone in the basement with the lights off. So eventually, my older brother pulled me through the basement window because they couldn't open the door. Long story short, basically both locks on the left and right of the building were screwed up, and that's why the door was always kept open a smidge. We stood outside pretending to mind our business, hoping to see the man come out. But there wasn't no way for him to leave since the doors were messed up. Apparently, the area where we saw the man was the place where my grandfather's neighbor hung himself. To this day, we believe the dude was still haunting there, but everyone's grandparents said not to talk about it because it makes the Zawi, Z-J-A-W-Y, Zawi, or phantoms, stick around. My friend claims she can see ghosts. Never believed her until now. She's my longest and oldest friend since 5th grade. Has always claimed to be a psychic medium who can see and talk to ghosts. Everywhere she went, she said she could see them. Sometimes they're just shadows. Sometimes just a presence. Sometimes a full-blown apparition. The one I remember most was a ghost named Jim or something. He was an old man who she would see in her closet. Not malevolent or anything. To me, that was creepy as hell. But she always seemed unfazed. As a kid, I believed it, but then grew out of it and assumed she did too. I moved states and didn't see each other for a couple of years, till I went to visit for the summer and we reunited. We were sitting in the living room watching TV and catching up, when I popped the question jokingly, "Any ghosts around?" She said there were a couple, but the one that caught her attention most was an old lady outside my mom's bedroom. Yeah, right. I'm going in my head that I'm a firm believer in science and psychology and logic. I also believe that the human brain is powerful and loves to play tricks on us, often projecting our own fears. I've always taken people's experiences with a respectful nod and a grain of salt. I humor her and I ask her details. She says she's some older woman from Texas. She might be related to my mom and she's Native American. I realized that this brief description fit my dead Nana. But that's probably a coincidence because we're in Texas and everybody has a dead grandma, and she knows my mom is part native. I ask her specific questions. She gets them all correct. The name of her husband, how long I knew her before she died, the gift she gave me as a baby, which of all of her children are dead or alive, and my final straw was when I pointed to a portrait on the wall with her kids, and I asked her, which one of those girls was a party-goer who always got in trouble? She got it right. At this point, I'm properly spooked, but I'm still in denial. I've known her for a while. Is there no chance she stumbled across an old picture album? Overheard a conversation with my mom and I about her? Hell, what if I told her myself and just forgot? We've known each other for 8 years. There's no chance I've forgotten some conversations from then. She tells me there's another ghost who is a man who wants to communicate. I ask him a variety of questions, pushing aside my slight unease as I'm thoroughly entertained by this whole ordeal. Either she's lying and really committed and I want to see how far I can push her, or she's telling the truth and we're actually talking to a ghost. I'm asking questions like how old was he when he died, and what did he die of, and what did he do when he was alive. I even jokingly asked what his type was and if he was single. We stopped talking for a bit and were messing around on our phones in silence, looking down and not in each other's peripheral vision. I suddenly get this inexplicable chill on the right side of my neck, which I try to ignore, chalking it up to some kind of breeze or mental thing. It was so minuscule and obsolete to me, I had no reaction or even looked up from my phone. I will say it felt different than the usual chill. It was almost concentrated, like something icy pressed against me. Then she looks up at me and verbatim says, "I just got an image in my mind of him touching your neck." She mimics the motion. It's in the same side in the spot right beneath my jaw, and my heart sank to my asshole. The sheer coincidence of the placement, the action, the previous shit before this. I genuinely was so freaked out. And while it's not as major or scary as other people's stories, it's enough for me to question my beliefs. I am kind of a skeptic. I chalk most things up to just figments of our imagination, but I take people's stories more seriously now. A lot of people who fake being mediums and psychics usually do it for attention or money. My friend gets nothing from it. In fact, she has a very much kind of just ignore it sort of an attitude. This is what makes me think that she might not be lying. She doesn't want anything from it and actually doesn't talk about it a whole lot. She's not trying to creep anyone out at all at the campfire, and she's not trying to get internet fame or scam some people into buying a palm reading at a little table. It's just something she lives with, and goddamn, what a shitty thing to live with if she actually does. My ghost story. Looking back now, I think it was something darker than a ghost. Thoughts. It started when I was 6, lasted until I was 8. I lived in a house with my mother, my 2 brothers, and my mother's friend Tracy, and Tracy's boyfriend Paul, along with their 3 boys. I was the only girl with 5 boys, and this house was in a small town in Ohio. Since I was the only girl, I had to have a room by myself while all the boys slumped together in the same room. Every night, it never missed a night, I was awoken terrified to a little boy screaming and crying when I would hear a woman say, "Shh, almost done." You would think this could be like possibly one of the other boys in the house and my mother Tracy comforting them, right? Wrong. After many nights being awoken and terrified, I would start to sleep with my mother. I still remember the first time seeing this little boy. It was one night I was sleeping with my mother. She got up to go to the bathroom. I was hearing the same thing this night, so I followed her. When my mom was done in the bathroom and we were walking back into her bedroom, I looked into an empty room, which isn't a bedroom. see a small black silhouette of a little boy standing there staring dead straight at us. I ignore it and I follow my mother back to bed. And I would like to add, every night I could hear the woman walking back and forth down the hallway whispering. I remember one night I was laying there under the blankets terrified, humming to myself while the same thing happened. Out of nowhere I hear a woman whisper into my ear, "You're mine." That morning I'd seen the little boy again. I was laying in bed wide awake and I could see out into the bedroom. This bedroom was at the end of the hall, and you know the end of the hallway where there's a wall. Well, I seen the same little black silhouette of a boy come out of the wall and walk slowly down the hall, staring straight ahead of him. I'd like to add that I knew each time the crying and screaming would stop. I lived by the railroad, and every time the railroad would go very early in the morning, all of it would stop. Fast forward a couple of months and everybody thinks little me was crazy. That was because nobody heard or seen anything at night, until Paul, Tracy's boyfriend, spoke up. Said that if he was up late at night by himself, he would hear and see, and I quote, "sketchy shit." Can't remember any specific circumstances after the ones I mentioned above, but like I said, this happened for years. I tried to look up any information about the house and couldn't find anything. I used to think it was just spirits, but now that I'm older, I believe it was something darker than that. More mini ghost stories. This is an experience where I lived in Indiana with my ex. We was driving at night, and we was arguing in the car on the back road, and my ex pulled over randomly on this back road to talk. While we was talking, we heard something randomly hit the car. Then a couple of minutes later, after being silent to see if we heard anything else, we heard a slightly loud scream, and then something or someone sobbing. There was nobody around, and we got the hell out of there. Another experience would be when my son was born, and I still lived in Indiana. I was home alone with my son, who was a newborn. We both had COVID. His dad left to get medicine. While home alone, my son was sleeping, and I was awake scrolling on my phone. This house had a basement, and all of a sudden it sounded like somebody was running up and down the steps of the basement constantly. The second my ex came back and walked through the front door, it stopped. A third story would be at my now boyfriend's house. It was our 1-year anniversary, and I wanted to surprise him by showing up. He lives 2 hours away, and I didn't think I'd be able to make it that day. He was working, and the plan was to show up before he got off work, which I did. I want to mention that he's told me he believed this house was haunted by a man that he calls Toby. He's had his own experiences with Toby, and anyways, I was there by myself waiting for him to get off of work. I was cleaning around his house, keeping myself busy, and I suddenly kept getting this overwhelming feeling of something else was there. Random noises started happening. I swore I kept seeing things from the corner of my eye. When I would look fully at it, it would vanish. The one that really got me was when I was walking out of his front door to go to the car for something. As soon as I went to reach the front door handle, the door blew open in front of me. His neighbors have to think I'm nuts because I kept running out of the house multiple times, being scared, then going back in. When my boyfriend got home, I told him what happened, and he laughed and said it was probably Toby messing with you. Ghosts at work. So I'm pretty sure I have a few ghosts, or echoes. I don't know the difference. At my current job, I've been in my job for almost 2 years now, and I've been seeing quite a few things pretty constantly. It first started with a singular ghost who would just stand reasonably close to me watching me work, but would always be in a place no person could physically be. He looked like an older man, probably in his 60s, dressed in trousers, button-up, average build and height, shirt and a sweater vest. But his face seemed blurred every time I tried to look at him. would often vanish as I looked directly at him. I could watch him if I used my peripherals, but other than watching. The second ghost is quite similar to the first in how he acts, just standing and watching, but likes to do it behind curtains and windows. He's a shorter, rounder man. He's dressed in work clothes, always standing with his hands behind his back. Neither of these two bother me as they just watch me work, like it's sort of startling, but because I'm not expecting it, but I have no bad vibes from them. The third ghost is much more active and interactive. The first time I encountered him, he was full tilt sprinting at me from my right as I was sitting working at my bench. I first caught the movement out of the corner of my eye, and by the time I turned to face him, he was in my face and suddenly was gone. For context, my welding bench is in the back right corner of the room, and facing the door is sort of an added-on storage room, which you have to walk 3 or 5 feet for me to get past into that storage area. So I'd know if someone was there. Very often, when I see this, I get bad vibes. He turns off my equipment while I'm using it, knocks stuff off my table that's behind me, and makes low grumbling noises which are right in my ear that are loud enough to hear all over the machines. Often when this ghost is about, I can see little shadow-like creatures skittering about in the floors and walls. These little things don't seem to actively really do anything, but always appear with more active ghosts. There may be more at my work, but it's always easy to tell. Well, not always easy to tell. I know there are certain areas of work that give me major heebie-jeebies, which I pay attention to, as I've had several past experiences, which kind of make me think that those ones were malicious. The ghosty throughout my life. Throughout my life, I've had some weird experiences. Seems this is the place to write about them. I've given them names which might sound silly, but at the time I was scared shitless, and this is probably a coping mechanism. One, when I was still living at home and was around 16, the first ghost appeared. Me and my sister have dubbed them Sweetie Feet, or Sweaty Feet. At night, when all the lights were out, sometimes we could hear something walking in our rooms. They were named Sweaty Feet because it sounded like a person with wet, sweaty feet walking. You would hear the feet rising from the floor and making the slurpy sound only wet feet make. If this doesn't paint a picture, imagine being sweaty and standing up in front of a leather couch. This is the only ghost multiple people heard. Me and my sister on different nights in different rooms over many years. 2. I was around 16 as well. This one only happened once. Didn't sleep for a few days after this one. This one is called Freddy. When trying to go to sleep, I hear scratching on the connecting wall between my bedroom and my second sister's bedroom. I sounded like something with Freddy Krueger knife hands sliding his knives slowly over the wall. I knew my sister wasn't at home that night, so the room should be empty. I was too scared to move, so I called my mom and my sister, who didn't pick up because, well, 3 a.m. is not a good time to call people. They asked me about it the next morning. I told the story. Never one heard anything, but we went to go take a look at my sister, 2, in the room where I heard the sound. There was nothing visible on the walls, but there was a water trail leading from the middle of her room and stopping at my room. This water trail passed a door and defied gravity to reach my door. Because we were first thinking it might be a leak wouldn't explain the impossible route the trail took. 3. I was 20 around this one, and I named this one Talker or Toker. This translates to something like tapper from tapping on something. I was staying up way late playing computer games on the family PC downstairs, and at a certain point I heard something tapping on the window. About 1 tap every 5 seconds very consistently. First thought was the wind, But after a few minutes and the consistency of the tapping once every fucking 5 seconds, I got scared and just ran upstairs to my bedroom. I think this is the only night in my life I did not brush my teeth because moving to the bathroom would move me closer to the window. All was well when I was in my bed on the 3rd floor, until it started again. One tap every 5 seconds on the bedroom window, a place that should be unreachable. 4th and the last one, and the first one since moving out of my mother's house, Mr. Echo. I was 22 at this time, just standing in my apartment, just smoking out a window, and all of a sudden I hear something. It sounded like whispering, and a volume of someone talking, so pretty loud whispering. This is harder to explain. English is not my first language. I couldn't see anything, but the origin of the sound was clear. I heard the whisper, and I could follow my eyes where it was originating from and where it was going. It moved through my living room in a straight line. When it passed my dresser, a picture frame fell over and broke. When it reached the windows, it took a turn to the left and then stopped when reaching an open window. Your English is better than others. Happy Smiley. My sister is 6 years older than me, 23-year-old female. So, when I was in middle school, she was a year or 2 out of high school. At the time, she lived in an apartment close by that was kind of weird. The building was split up, the downstairs was a family business, and the upstairs was split in 2, one half being her mom's studio and the other half my sister's apartment. She was the only person living in the building. She had some creepy experiences there. She described hearing footsteps and sounds of people moving around downstairs in the middle of the night. There was a cuckoo clock downstairs that was broken, had no batteries anyway. She said that she would hear it go off in the middle of the night around 3 a.m. One day, I'm hanging out with her in the apartment and we smelled something foul, like absolutely rotten. The smell was coming from the kitchen area. We couldn't for the life of us find the source. We took out the trash, sniffed everything in the fridge, and nothing. There's a long, narrow closet in the kitchen that was unfinished. It had extra construction materials from when the apartment was renovated. Some planks of wood and nails. My sister just used it to store her bags of recycling. But we decided to check it anyway in case an animal had somehow gotten in and died or something. We opened the closet and we saw something we hadn't seen before tacked onto the back wall, but couldn't see it completely in the dark. My sister and I were both scared to go closer, so of course she made me go to the back of the closet to grab it. I ran, snatched it off the wall, ran back to see what it was. It was a small piece of paper about the size of a book page with a smiley face drawn in what looked like purple crayon. The paper was old, yellow, and stiff, like it might break apart if you weren't careful. We decided to call it Happy Smiley. She claimed that it had never been there before. It was way too old to have been put there recently. We also couldn't think of anybody that had been in the apartment that would or could have put it there. My sister was clearly scared, so I don't believe it was her pranking me. If she was, she never came clean. We also noticed that the rotten smell was gone after I grabbed the paper off the wall. We took the piece of paper to my grandparents' house to ask them if they knew anything about it, but our grandma took the paper and threw it in their wood stove. She's quite religious and did not want to have anything paranormal or related in her house. We worried that this would be anger, or rather would anger whatever was in the apartment, and luckily it never escalated. But my sister and I continued to have weird experiences in the building. I worked at the business on the bottom floor. Constantly felt like I was being watched when I was the only one in the building. I also heard weird noises from the studio above me in the back room. One time I heard the sound of something like glass shattering. Thought it was the huge mirror that we had at the time, but when I checked the whole downstairs, there was absolutely nothing out of place or broken. It was an old building, so I'm sure some of these experiences can be explained away, but We still have no clue where Happy Smiley came from.